Hey guys, September 22nd, the 22nd day of Pediatric Cancer Awareness Month. My name's Tony, and every day this month I'm walking 3/4 of a mile and sharing that with you guys. 3/4 of a mile for us is the distance between the Ronald McDonald House in New York City on 73rd Street and Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. And this is Ben. Ben's older brother Sam and I would make that walk every day that we were in New York, and sometimes more than once a day. We lost Sam back in January. Sam passed away on January 23rd after a 4-year fight with neuroblastoma. He was 3 years old when he was diagnosed, and he was 7 years old when he passed away. We are walking to raise awareness for the issues that children facing pediatric cancer go through, and also the families, what the families go through. We're also raising funds for Alex's Lemonade Stand, which is a great organization that supports the long-term fight against pediatric cancer through research grants. And also, in the meantime, until we get there, they do a great job of supporting families who are going through the fight. I thought that it might be interesting tonight to talk about what it's like in the hospital at night. With Sam, I couldn't even begin to guess how many hospital stays we had. Everywhere from, I think we had a couple overnights, to our longest hospital stay was well over a month inpatient. For us, nighttime in the hospital depended a lot on whether we were on the 6th floor of Medical City Dallas, which was the pediatric oncology unit. Did you turn it off? Or if we were downstairs in the pediatric intensive care unit, the PICU. Or if we were general admission over in Fort Worth, I can't believe I'm blanking on the name of the hospital in Fort Worth. It's been a long day. Somebody will chime in and remind me of where we spent a month in the germ lockdown. Cook Children's. We were general admission there before his stem cell transplant when we did the harvest, and we were in the transplant unit. Thank you, Cami. We were in the transplant unit when he went through his recovery after his stem cell transplant. We even did a couple of overnights at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. Those were not planned. So we've had our share of inpatient stays at hospitals for sure. Nighttime at the hospital is I don't know about you guys, but nighttime not in the hospital, nighttime out here for us means routines. Going through the same stuff that we do every night. It's getting the kids' teeth brushed, PJs on, read books, sing songs, go to bed, help Emmy with a little homework, get her down into bed, watch a couple shows and do a little laptop work. That's like every weeknight, right? that's not what nighttime in the hospital is like. The first thing that I think kind of vanishes when you're in there is that sense of time. You know, especially if you're in like a recovery phase or something, I guess what happens is your basis for timekeeping is no longer set around wake up, 3 meals, school day, work day. You know, your basis for timekeeping is now around when you have procedures, blood draws, bandage changes. And those, like, there's a loose schedule around a lot of those, some tighter than others, but you're all at the mercy of everything else that the hospital has going on, right? You up there, baby? So you lose that sense of regularity and rhythm. And so, you know, for us, nighttime at the hospital, depending on where we're sitting, a lot of places it did start with a sunset, which was always nice because there's always big windows, and Sam always liked having the windows open. And then, you know, he may have slept the entire afternoon and doesn't want to sleep anymore. So, you know, we might be up, or, you know, if he was on steroids, he was going to have trouble sleeping either way. So, you know, we might be up watching a show or a movie, listening to music, playing Uno. He loved to play Uno in the hospital. Before you know it, you turn around, you look at the clock, and your 5-year-old is up at 11 p.m. So, you know, here we are in the fight for his life at the time where we should be as healthy as possible and having no illusions about how important sleep is. It's 11 a.m. or 11 p.m. and he's still awake. So you try to get him settled down. You turn off all the lights that you can, which means one small light for the nurses to come and walk by that you need to leave on. The light that's coming through the window from the hallway, even though you shut the blinds as best you could. They do have usually nice blackouts from the outside light, so that's good. And the lights from at least 3 different pumps that your child is attached to. So you get your child settled in and trying to sleep. We were lucky with Sam. Most of the time, whether he was home or somewhere else, once it was bedtime and his head hit the pillow, he was out. He wouldn't hop out of bed and come check on your room and ask to be covered up 4 times a night like someone I know. You need mama to cover you?
No.
Not right now?
I'm not going that night.
You're not gonna go night-night?
Mm-hmm.
What about, you have your PJs on?
Mm-hmm.
What about when we get home? You go night-night?
No.
Who's gonna put you night-night?
I'm not going that night.
And then when you get in night-night, are you gonna stay in your bed?
I'm not going that night.
So, it was a little easier with Sam. Sam didn't mind going to bed. So you get the kid in, tucked in, and then it's your turn. Usually for me, after he went down, it was laptop time, which was either work or games to clear my mind. Because honestly, one of the things that I think my wife and I have in common, I didn't used to have this problem. When you lay down and put your head down and try to go to sleep, all the day and all the questions, all the decisions that you made start replaying in your head, and then all the what ifs start popping in there. And you spent so much time being hopeful all day in front of your son, your spouse, your family who's asking questions, the people on Facebook, that it gets hard to stay that way in your own head. And you lay down, but you pop back up. You wander the halls for a little while, down to the family snack area. You run into, sometimes, depending on how late it is, you run into other parents who are doing the same thing. And most of the time, especially if they are not new, you don't talk about it. The new parents will ask you, how's it going? What are you in for? The parents who have been doing this for a while, they know not to ask. So you wander around as best you can, settle back in, work on the laptop until your eyes are bleeding, and they're closing. That's the time. To this day, that's the time I go to bed. It's not laptop anymore. Maud falls asleep. I leave the TV on because I can't. I lay down and it's not good things in my head. So I leave the TV on until my eyes are closing on their own. And then I usually switch to my headphones and listen to my audiobook. So back to the hospital. You get to sleep, just barely to sleep. Sam always had this weird, I swear to God, he had this sixth sense. Even before all the cancer stuff, he had a sixth sense. When I would start to fall asleep, just like, didn't matter if it was 11:30 or 2 a.m., I would just start to fall asleep. And it's as though, I always envision it as though my body started giving off a different type of waves as I drifted off into sleep, and he could sense those because right about that time, he'd make a noise from his room, even before the cancer. But in the hospital, depending on the treatment, he had one specific noise. It sounded like, and I had about a second and a half to get my feet on the ground, take the 2 steps across the room, and get the bucket under him to make sure that we wouldn't be up an extra half hour cleaning up vomit. Or he'd roll over and a wire or a tube would get tangled and he would be tangled up and he'd pull on his access port. I mean, he's hooked up in 3 different places. It's not hard to pull on that, and that doesn't feel good. I forgot to tell you, this whole time when you did drift off, I'm sure some really awesome designers have done their very best to create a combination, compact couch and bed to sleep alongside the hospital bed. I know they tried their hardest. It's not comfy. Whether you're on the model that pulls out like a couch that has the bar right where your ribs go, or if you're on the one where the cushion folds over, the smaller one, some of y'all know what I'm talking about, where you're on the smaller one that feels like you're sleeping on a brick. It's not comfy. I'll tell you, those little eggshell things, that's what we learned about when we went into Cook Children's. You put the eggshell on top of that. Okay, so you get them settled in, and if you have to, cleaned up. If it was a bad night, the nurses have had to come in and change, or the orderlies actually had to come in and they had to change all the sheets and the bedding. By this time, it's 12:30, 1 o'clock, maybe later. In my case, you're passing the nurses in the hallway at 2, and they're like, "What are you doing up?" And you're like, "Ah." So you get to sleep, finally, kid's asleep. Now it's late, he's had his bathroom break, he's had his sick, he's done. You get settled off again. Upstream occlusion in the pump. All of a sudden you're laying there and there's this shrill ee, ee, ee. And the pump has decided on one of the 3 IVs that there's something blocking it between the pump and the bag. So you push the button and the nurse, hopefully the one who's not dealing with something else, comes in and looks at it There's no occlusion, by the way, almost ever. Clears the finicky pump and sets it back up. You go back to sleep. If you're lucky, the kid doesn't roll over again and set up a downstream occlusion. That's when they lay on one of their tubes. Sets off the same alarm, only it's below the pump. We were lucky. Sam was a pretty heavy sleeper. He'd sit still. Throughout the night, nurses come in and out doing their very, very best to be quiet. They try so hard and only bother you if they need to. For me, I had an agreement with the nurses. I would handle all the PPs all day if once I was asleep, they would handle the PPs if they were in the room. And a lot of times, you know, they'd come and check on him to do vitals or something, and because they disturbed him, he'd wake up and have to go. So they would handle that. I know for my wife, she didn't let them do that. She did all of that. Hey, turn the flashlight on so they can see us. Let me get you. Ready? There we go. Yeah, that's better. You're adorable. We're gonna get good comments on you.
I want to find it on.
It is on. Oh, you want both on?
Yeah.
Every once in a while, and by the way, all of this stuff, I said earlier there's no routine. All of this stuff is your routine stuff, by the way. This happens every night. Every night. Now, every once in a while, you are rattled out of your sleep by something that doesn't usually happen. I think of the one that always comes to my head was she had to be new, I guess, I hope. The new phlebotomist, that's the person who's in charge of drawing blood. The new phlebotomist comes at 3:30 in the morning because she knows that your son needs lab counts that day. And she proceeds to start to try to put a rubber band around his arm to get the veins to pop out to draw blood. Meanwhile, he has a central line. He's got a Metaport in his chest that blood can be drawn from painlessly. And so you wake up to a person who's not a usual member of your team doing a procedure that you know is not necessary for him. And you've got that split-second decision to ask yourself, do I rely on her professionalism or my gut? I don't think it's her fault. She didn't know. I booted her out of the room and then apologized later. Because I woke up to screams because he knows when he doesn't need an extra poke. Oh, I forgot the other one. That whole time you're trying to go to sleep, your kid's hooked up most of the time to a monitor. So you can see three things: heart rate, blood pressure, oxygen. And again, depending on how you're doing, those can be the worst. Those nights when we're in the PICU, there's no bed in the PICU for you, by the way. You're sleeping in a recliner. And the recliner's facing the monitors. And so you're watching that O2 level go up and down and up and down. Also, a lot of times, because the one nurse in the PICU has to watch two patients, sometimes they've got their other patient, all the names and stuff are protected, but you get to see what's going on the other patient's heart. And you've been doing this long enough that you know when that kid is tachycardic. So you're not just worrying about your own. But sometimes back to the outer, that's a routine thing. The outer routine things, sometimes you watch that O2 sat drop and it keeps dropping and you know it's not a good number, so you call the nurse. She's been watching it out there. She was already on her way. So they try oxygen, still not going. So then they try forced oxygen, still not going. Now we're in the PICU because his brain is being starved of the oxygen that it needs. So they're trying to be as minimally invasive as possible while still trying to save your son's life in front of your eyes. At 4:30. We started at 3:30, now it's 4:30, and you don't know how this is gonna end. I want to hold you too, buddy. Let me finish this, and I will. I'm come around full circle here on our walk, but you know, nighttime at the hospital, it's not restful for them. It's not restful for you. It's really more about watching and worrying and waiting because it's quiet. And for a cancer parent, quiet is not good. Quiet is the last thing that you want. Guys, thanks for walking with me tonight. Thank you so much for everything that you've done. We appreciate the donations for Alex's lemonade stand. It's been huge. I'm gonna say, yesterday was the first day all month we did not have a single donation. So I know that all of you who are watching this have already done your part, and I really appreciate that. So now what we've got to do is we've got to push this out to some more people. So I need you to mash that share button, send it out. If you haven't sent one, or if you sent them before, send them out. And when you send them out, put a personal story with it, okay? Tell them how this video makes you feel and what you want to do to try to stop it. See if they'll help you guys, because they might not help us. Thank you so much, guys. We'll see you tomorrow.